Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Obsertelligence podcast. My name is Belyadi. I have a very special guest with us today, Dr. Shahab Mohaghegh. He is one of the pioneers in AI and machine learning in the oil and gas industry. I'm going to read his bio prior to getting started. Shahab, a pioneer in the applications of artificial intelligence and machine learning in the exploration and production industry, is a professor of petroleum and natural gas engineering at West Virginia University and is the president and CEO of Intelligence Solutions ISI. He holds a BS, MS, and a PhD degrees in petroleum and natural gas engineering. He's the director of WVU Leeds Laboratory for Engineering Applications of Data Science, including more than 30 years of research and development in the petroleum engineering application of AI and ML. He has authored 3 books, which I highly recommend: Shale Analytics, Data-Driven Reservoir Modeling, Application of Data-Driven Analytics for Geological Storage of CO2. More than 200 technical papers and carried out more than 60 projects for independent NOCs and IOCs. He is a SPE Distinguished Lecturer 2007 and 2020 and has been featured 4 times as the distinguished author in SPE's Journal of Petroleum Technology. He is the founder of Petroleum Data-Driven Analytics, SPE's technical section dedicated to AI and machine learning. He has been honored by the U.S. Secretary of Energy for his AI-based technical contribution in the aftermath of the Deepwater Horizon Macondo incident in the Gulf of Mexico, and was a member of the U.S. Secretary of Energy's Technical Advisory Committee on Unconventional Resources in 2 administration from 2008 through 2014. He represented the United States in international standardization in the International Standard Organization on Carbon Capture and Storage Technical Committee. With that being said, Dr. Shahab, it's a pleasure and honor to have you today. Welcome on board.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we can get right into the questions. The first questions, when I was trying to think about how we can talk about some of these details in this podcast, I thought about like the first question is to be, get your kind of overall vision as one of the pioneers in the application of AI and machine learning in the oil and gas industry. What is your overall vision for the future of AI and automation in this industry?
The future, in my opinion, the future of this technology in our industry is going to be very specific and literally is going to control a lot of it. The only issue is that it's not going to happen very quickly. And the fact that the future of our industry will have a lot to do with this technology is part of the fact that this is true not only for our industry, it's going to be true for almost every other industry. It's literally a revolution that has taken place since the last big revolution that has happened for Homo sapiens was the Industrial Revolution that started in 16th century, but in reality took literally a couple of centuries until it got to where it was supposed to be. The only difference is that this revolution, which is a combination of this information technology revolution and it's associated with the biotechnology that actually is taking place. That's one of the things whenever I lecture to my students, one of the things I strongly recommend that they go after and learn from, beside neuroscience, which to be honest with you is going to help you understanding of AI as well, is how the biotechnology, specifically what's called CRISPR, is one of the most beautiful things that has recently happened. And the 2 ladies who created that, they just won the Nobel Prize this year for chemistry on that. So these two technologies, the information technology and biotechnology, this is the new revolution. The only difference is this revolution is not going to take centuries to change everything. It's going to take decades, definitely. We're not there yet. There has been very good things that have been happening, but it usually takes some time before it come to the surface with its reality, because right now a lot of people think they know what this technology is, which is not really true. It takes time. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and then you will see that it's going to make a lot of difference, and that's true for our industry as well.
Okay. So I guess what type of like in the next like few years, what kind of technological advancements in AI are you mostly bullish about that you think is truly going to revolutionize the industry?
As far as our industry is concerned, in my opinion, the first one that is going to have the most impact is going to be the application of this technology, reservoir engineering. And that has to do with the fact that reservoir engineering and reservoir modeling has to do with fluid flow in porous media. That as long as you go above and beyond a core, that you take it to your laboratory and has a 1 inch by 2 inch size, and you do analysis on it. Outside of that, the real reservoir that we deal with and we have been dealing with is tens of thousands of feet under the ground, and nobody has ever been there, has seen it, has touched it, observed it. It's a lot about our understanding of this physics. Therefore, the way that in the past several decades we have come up with mathematical equations in order to build a physics-based model for reservoir, which literally controls a lot of decision-making on the production. It has a lot to do with assumptions, guesswork, and sometimes preconceived notions and biases, or things you want to happen rather than it really is happening or not. And then at the same time, we do a lot of measurement. We make a lot of measurements during drilling, during logging, during core analysis, during pressure measurements, and all the things that we do from. So these measurements, if they are used as is in their reality, without making any assumption, if you use these measurements in order to be able to build a model of the reservoir, and of course you have to validate it, but then let's assume that you are capable of doing that. Then the difference that it's going to make in how fluid flow in porous media in a realistic fashion takes place, then it's going to make a big difference. And that is why when you even compare it to other engineering application of this technology, for this one very specifically, it plays a very important role. And I think that is going to be the one that's most important, and it's going to come to the surface closer than every other application of this technology in our industry.
Got it. So reservoir engineering is on top of your list right now.
Yes, and I think maybe it has to do with the fact that I'm a reservoir engineer. but in reality, I've applied this technology to drilling, and I've applied it to production to a lot of time. and recently to artificial lift. And now we're working on surface facility modeling. And honestly, the more I do all of others, then I realize how fantastically this technology is important in reservoir engineering. It still does a very good job there compared to other things that we traditionally do. But when you compare it to what we do in reservoir modeling, then you realize it's really, really helpful.
Got it. Okay. So I know you've been involved with, many different applications of machine learning in the oil and gas industry. Can you discuss some of the applications that you've successfully applied and completed, and some of their value proposition? Maybe like 2 or 3 applications that you have seen very good success, that you've actually been impressed after you've gone through the exercise.
Yes. Let me talk about 3 of them for you. The first one I would call top-down modeling, or literally data-driven reservoir modeling. As I just mentioned for the last question that you had, it is a purely data-driven, and the data that I'm referring to is field measurements. And the third one that I'm going to talk about, you see what I mean by that, because the third one has to do with shale. And when it comes to shale, then still call it data-driven. There is a very important issue associated with that. I'll talk about that in a second. But the first one is purely field measurement, data-driven reservoir modeling, which, in my opinion, as I had mentioned, it brings a lot of realities to help you make decisions rather than any assumptions that you make. And this technology has very good characteristics. What it does, number one, it allows you to build a full field reservoir model. And by the way, some people recently use AI to literally do decline curve analysis. As those of you guys know about oil and gas industry, decline curve analysis, we've been doing it since 1960, and it's a very, very simplified version that literally you don't need a bachelor's degree to do that. You see the dots, give me a pen, I go and done, right? So people now use LSTM and other technologies to do AI version of decline curve analysis, which is very fine and good, but it's still decline curve analysis. It's one well, and it's just doing a simplification of what's happening to it. It has nothing to do with full field reservoir model. A full field reservoir model, it's a single model. For example, take the difference between decline curve analysis and numerical reservoir simulation. This is what you have done and we've been doing for decades. The difference is that when you do decline curve analysis, it's incredibly simplified. And if you're doing it to a field that has 200 wells, then you do it 200 times, 1 per well. And that has to do with 1 well at a time. It has nothing to do with other wells, or it has nothing to do with anything else that's going on, otherwise the dots that you have in the data. And so this is a very, very simplified version. It does not represent the reservoir, and it does not represent reality,
Sure.
Whereby numerical reservoir simulation is a single model. It's one model, but it applies to all the 200 wells that you have. You don't change the model for each well. To be honest with you, sometime in numerical simulation, we do that when you want a history match, but nevertheless. So that's the difference. So the TDM, or data-driven reservoir modeling, that is a single model for the entire reservoir, but then it's applied to every single well in order to match the history and make prediction of what's going to happen. And the beauty of it is it runs very fast. You can take this model once you develop it, once you train it, once you history match it, and validate it in both space and time. And when you start trusting it, then you can use it in order to perform optimization of production optimization And another thing about this specific technology is it is not only reservoir, it's reservoir plus wellbore. So we don't need flowing bottom of pressure because hardly ever historical data exist for that. But there is data for choke setting and flow line and wellhead pressure. So this top-down modeling uses flowing bottom, does not use flowing bottom of pressure, but it uses the wellhead pressure. So it's a coupled reservoir wellbore model. And once you do that, then you can use it in order to optimize production by modifying choke setting and wellhead pressure and flow line pressure. You can use it in order to do gas lift optimization or other artificial lift optimization as part of this process. You can use it for water flooding optimization, gas injection optimization. And of course, then you can use it to identify where would be the best place to drill your next well, identifying sweet spots and so forth. So that's one of them. The second one has to do not with the real reservoir, but with the numerical reservoir simulator. So if you build a numerical reservoir simulator using any software that's available, one of the key issues with the numerical reservoir simulation is that when you do it for large reservoirs, then you end up having literally millions of grid blocks cells. And when it takes place, then if you ask a question, the deployment, first of all, it takes you years to build it, but let's assume you build it and you history match it and it's very successful and you trust it. But the problem with it is if you ask a question, and even if you have an HPC with 100 cores, you have to wait a day for it to give you a response. So you have to be very careful how you ask questions because you can't ask more than 10 questions, very small numbers. So one thing that AI and machine learning does, we call it smart proxy modeling, whereby without changing the physics, reduce order model, we do not change the resolution, time and space, you do not change the physics that has built it, but use exactly as is. And you build a proxy that can replicate that numerical reservoir simulator at the grid block level, change in pressure and saturation, but it can do it the same model that takes 24 hours on 100 CPU and an HPC. You can actually run it on your laptop and get the results in minutes. Therefore, you literally can run that model for millions of times in order to make decisions. So it increases the utilization of numerical reservoir simulation. That's the second. And the third, there are more, but you asked, I'm just going to give you three. The third one is what I call shale analytics, which is specifically in the US and right now in Argentina and China, and now Middle East people are using unconventional as well. It has to do with unconventionals. And as I mentioned, it's purely data-driven, but there is one major difference between its data with the data that's currently used. For those people who use traditional and conventional technology to analyze and model and come up with optimization of an unconventional resource such as shale, they use ray tracing analysis, they use numerical simulation. And the key is the data that they use has absolutely nothing to do with reality. When you want to use RTA or numerical reservoir simulation to model production of a shale well, what do you use? You use fracture half-length, you use fracture height, fracture width, fracture conductivity, or SRV, stimulated reservoir volume. And these are what I call soft data. Why? Because such a thing doesn't even exist. There are simplification of the reality, And the interesting thing about these items are you can change them to be whatever you want to be. I mean, if you have done them, you know it. And actually, we are doing right now. My grad students are working on this particular topic to show and prove, because we're not just mentioning it, we're going to show and prove that you can come up with two completely opposite results with the same data, with the same characteristics that you have. You can, and depends who your boss is. If my boss likes or believes in high proppant concentration for hydraulic fracturing, then I can use what's happening or the data that I have, and I use RTA or numerical simulation and prove history match it and prove that he's correct. And after 2 months, when he's gone and another boss comes in and he has exactly opposite idea that no, high proppant concentration is a bad idea. You should use low proppant concentration. I can use the same data using RTA and numerical simulation and prove this one is correct and that one is wrong. In other words, that tells you that when you use these soft data, such as fracture half length, fracture height, fracture conductivity, SRM, SRV, what's happening is it really has nothing to do with reality. It has to do with what you think should happen, what do you want to happen, and how do you want to talk about it. And so that is the major difference for when it's used purely field measurement data, we call it hard data.
Yeah.
When you compare it to soft data. And shale analytics is the application of AI and machine learning to unconventional resources, and it's a big deal in my opinion. It's very, very important.
Yeah, so your message is pretty clear. Use hard data instead of using soft data that are calculated, which would provide you more realistic, more unbiased, results, basically. Got it. Okay. And then could you touch on, I really liked your idea on the proxy model. Could you touch on, have any of these commercial software, organizations reached out to you on maybe including some of your AI proxy model techniques into their platforms?
Yes, several times. The only difference has been that we did not come to conclusions to collaborate with each other. And I think it had to do, to a large extent, these were actually the two of them. I mean, all three big ones, but one of them have not to do with what I'm saying, because our communication with them almost came to 100%. But what happened, it was a time that the price of oil went down. Right. So bad, and it had to do with drilling, by the way, had nothing to do with reservoir engineering. They asked us to do something, we did it, and they were incredibly happy with what happened, and they immediately wanted to get the whole thing from us. And we were discussing that, and then the price of oil went from 120 to nothing. And actually, half of the people that were involved with us they were laid off. So that changed. So that's not the company I'm talking about. But the other big ones we had interaction with. The only problem with them was they had, and they still do, some of these big ones. The head of their AI and machine learning people are not domain experts. They are AI experts, no doubt about it, but it seems that they don't realize there is a difference between application of this technology to engineering related problem versus application of this technology to non-engineering related problem. They're completely different from one another. And that's why they do not realize what's happening, and they have a completely different idea, and that's why I could not come to conclusion and agreement with that. But yes, they approached me several times. Yes.
I got you. Okay. Okay. And so like I'm sure you guys are always working on new exciting projects. What are some of the of course non-confidential projects that you guys are currently working on that you see a tremendous positive impact, on the industry? Like I know a lot of these techniques are first developed in school and then are phased out to the industry. So, are you working on anything that is very exciting that makes you really excited? That you think are going to have a very, I guess, a tremendous impact on the industry?
Yes, actually, we are working on 4 projects right now at WPU, and 3 of them are exactly the 3 I talked to you about. One is on TDM, the other one is on building smart proxy for a numerical reservoir simulator, and the third one is with shale analytics, which we're doing it for Permian Basin. However, what's interesting and exciting is the 4th one that we've been doing right now for almost 3 years, and we have published a lot about it. And that has to do, as you are very well aware, that oil industry has always used the technology that comes from other industries and then bring it in and change it and makes it to be used in our industry. This is for the first time is the other way around. The smart proxy model that I just talked to you about, now we're using it in mechanical and chemical engineering. So we're taking it the other way around rather than they coming in. So what we did and developed for numerical reservoir simulation, right now we have been doing it for computational fluid dynamics and models that have been built by very well known I think it's called ANSYS Fluent, it's a commercial CFD that mechanical engineers and chemical engineers use extensively. So now we are using that. We have already done that quite successfully, and it has amazed a lot of people in that industry. And so that's why we keep going on it. So we've been able to actually take exactly a CFD model that takes 24 hours on the US Department of Energy's HPC system for a single run. We made a very, very complex system. We made a smart proxy of that. And the model had 10 million cells. And we've been able to apply our smart proxy model, and now we can run the same, and the accuracy is above 98%.
Oh wow!
All the 10 million cells on, and on not only on one parameter, but on up to 8 different parameters: pressure, temperature, different CO2, oxygen, nitrogen, all of that. So now you can run it on your laptop literally in 2-3 minutes. They tested us, what we call blind validation of what they gave us, and then we did it, and then they gave us only the input and said, now give us the output, and we send it through our model, we give it to them, and they ran that and they compared it, and that's why we're doing a very good job with it. We're very happy with it.
Right, right. Wow, that's very good. 98% accuracy. I think you cannot. I mean, that's pretty darn good. Okay, so I guess you have a lot of experience in with starting from neural networks. Supervised learning, unsupervised reinforcement. Now people talk about deep reinforcement learning these days. People talk about deep learning in general. Like as you're aware, the LSTM that you mentioned, the convolutional neural networks, which one of these, I guess, machine learning types, supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement, which one of these do you foresee to have like a lot of impact or the most impact in the next few years?
The ones that we have been using is a combination of unsupervised and supervised.
Semi-supervised then.
Yes, and we do not. We have tried a reinforced learning, but it didn't work for what we were trying to do. But we were able to do supervised combination of supervised and unsupervised together. And the only thing is the techniques that have been developed to solve non-engineering related problem, 90% of the time they do not work for engineering problem.
Mhm.
A convolutional neural network is a very good example, actually. The top-down modeling that I talked to you about, that you use real field measurement in order to build a reservoir model.
Mhm.
What we use is exactly opposite of convolutional neural network. We call it deconvolutional neural network, actually. And it has to do because if when you see what now, when I say that, don't get me wrong, that we don't need to learn what LSTM or convolutional neural network or everything that they highly expert AI people do. We don't need to learn from them. That's exactly opposite. You must, all my grad students, I make sure that they learn. However, what's different is you have to learn what they do. But if you learn it correctly, then you know that is not what you should be using here. What you learn in that process is what was it that they were trying to solve. And the technique that they used, how did it address the problem that they were dealing with? Then you learn how, because you are not addressing the same type of problem.
Yeah.
But if you understand how the thought process that it went through for them to solve that problem, then by learning convolutional neural network, you learn how to deal with deconvolutional neural network. Because the way convolutional neural network works, what does the word convolutional means? Combining things, you bringing things together, right? And this happens when you are doing image recognition. Because that's one of the words of deep learning that people use. They think the only meaning of that has to do with the number of hidden layers. Well, look at the convolutional neural network. If you have 15 layers, how many of them are hidden neurons? Not all 15, right? So you see 5 to 10 layer has to do with digital signal processing. And the digital signal processing, what it does, it analyzes or it deals with the image and extract things from that image such that when you put them together and convolve them, you convolution, when you bring them together, then it makes sense to a neural network, right?
Yeah.
So what do we do in reservoir engineering? We do exactly the opposite.
The opposite, yeah.
Because everything in reservoir engineering that you measure has to do with time and space. So the neural network that you have to make, it should be, because then if you want to identify where to drill a new location that you want to drill, if you drill there, what are you going to get? Because the data that you receive, if you look at the history of 20 years of 200 different wells that have been producing from a field, and when you look at them, do you see a beautiful decline curve? No, you see things up and down, go up, go down, but there is no. Now, when you do numerical reservoir simulation, when you drill, what do you see? Beautiful
decline.
Exactly. Yep. But the issue is why, what's happening between, why does it go up and down, up and down, up and down? It has to do with time. It has to do with operational condition. It has to do, does it have to, is the porosity causing this? No. Nope. Is the permeability causing this? No. The space is not causing it. The time is causing it. So, but everything you get is a function of both space and time. But when you identify when to drill, the space is there and you only going. So what you have to do, you have to deconvolve the space and time. And you have to train a model to be able to do that. So it's exactly opposite. So my point is, it is very correct. It's very good to understand what they work,
Mhm.
But if you think that's what you're going to use to solve reservoir engineering problem, then there's something wrong. You haven't realized, or you haven't got what this technology is. You know, it is not just mathematics. That's one of the major issues that unfortunately our engineers, when engineers look at AI and machine learning, for 20 years, I've been telling people, I don't know if you've listened to the Petro Talk that I have on the YouTube.
I have actually seen that. Yeah.
I talked about that. What I said there in that, it's a 10-minute talk. What I talked about there, it was with all the university people there. I've been saying that for 20 years, that you do not need to bring only AI experts. You need domain expertise, right? But then what has happened since then is the domain experts that come and try to use this technology, when they become, because they're not successful, they immediately come up with other ideas, hybrid model. Let's use equation to generate the data. Why do they do that? Because one of the problems with traditional engineers that we teach is that if you understand the mathematics behind the physics model, then you know what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem.
Right.
That is true for conventional and traditional engineering. It's not true in AI and machine learning, because the math behind AI and machine learning is so simple when you compare it to very complex applied mathematics. And when people who have only a BS or an MS, they understand the math, then they said, okay, I know, if I know the math, then I know everything.
Right.
But they don't realize that it's not about mathematics. It's literally has a lot to do with philosophy and approach of the solution rather than just the mathematics. That's one of the problems that we have.
I got you. No, that's very good. And so let's take a little twist here and kind of move towards like entrepreneurship. So if you're a small company today, like I know you started artificial intelligence, or I'm sorry, like intelligence solutions many decades ago. But if you're a small company today, what would you focus on? What's your advice for people in this crowded field of AI, especially within the oil and gas like industry?
To be honest with you, I don't have an answer for that. I don't know. I think I think the only way it makes sense for you to build a company is when you become an AI expert. As long as you are, first and foremost, you have to be a petroleum engineering expert. So we are assuming that's the case. If that's the case, if you are a petroleum engineering expert, then first you have to become an AI expert. And that takes more than watching a few YouTube videos or reading a couple of books. It takes a lot of time. And I always say, just if you want to hire people, and you have two people that come to you, one have just graduated with a PhD, and the other one has graduated, but it has 10 years of experience. Which one would you hire?
I would hire one with experience.
It's obvious, right? So, and why do people think then for reservoir engineering, for mechanical engineering, for chemical engineering, you need experience, but for data science, you don't. You just need to take a course and you become a data scientist. That's not true. You need that much. It's the same thing. You need experience because you get you make a lot of mistakes. Things don't work, and then you get upset, and then but don't give up. Right. Keep going, learn, and eventually it works. So, in my opinion, if these two expertise are not together, then building a company is not going to be very successful. But then if you are and you're building a company, what you need to do is to show people how have you done it, and hopefully it will work out.
Yeah, sure. No, that's a very good answer. So you're basically saying combine the domain expertise and basically like statistical knowledge and and that's the key to success. No, that's
not a statistical knowledge, but AI knowledge, because the
AI
statistics and AI are so different from each other.
Sure,
That's another issues that some people do not realize, because the statistics have been around for more than a century. It goes back literally more than 1 century when the statistics started. How about AI? AI, the way we understand it today, literally started in 1986. So these two can, and historically looking at it, that's another thing that's very important, is that people who are interested in this technology, they have to start with the history. Read what happened. What was the history? Find out who were the first people, the first scientists who were so against AI. Who were they? Statisticians. You know, you talk to Fred Aminzadeh. He's a very good person with the expertise in fuzzy set theory. You know, I'm sure you ask him or ask people who was against fuzzy set theory, who was against neural network. It was the first people who were against it were not engineers. It was a statistician, because they're saying you don't know what you're talking about. If you're dealing with data, we've been dealing with data for hundreds of years, and you're just saying you're so good. Yeah. And then you find out, oh man, these two are. And then statisticians came to a conclusion, say, well, we cannot go against this. And actually, there are books written on that. There is a paper. It's a fantastic paper written by a professor, a statistics professor in Berkeley. Who exactly says what I just he said. He wrote that book, that paper for his colleagues in Berkeley, telling them the difference between neural network and AI versus the statistics, and telling them these two are not the same. Please do not criticize us or criticize these people who do AI related thing. Here's the difference between them. And so anyways.
And that's very good. Yeah, if you could share that paper, I'd like to put it in the, at the bottom,
I will do that.
Thank you very much. And then there's another question that gets asked quite a lot, and there are differences of opinions, when you ask the same question from different people. And it is, so if you ask, for example, Elon Musk, for example, he'll tell you that AI is gonna, be problematic in the future. If you ask Eric Schmidt, the ex-CEO of Google, he's going to say, no, it's going to be great. We're going to have a lot of these manual tasks, tedious tasks automated, So do you think that AI will create more jobs than it will eliminate?
Honestly, I don't know. My honest answer is I don't know. I'm very excited about this technology. Is it going to cut off some jobs? That's for sure, no doubt about it. But is it possible for it to create other jobs? That is also true. Very, very, very true. Mm-hmm. Now, what is it going to do to the whole thing? I mean, if you go into the detail of what Elon Musk and people who mention that say, they have very good reason for what they say, and there you can understand, but there is some extrapolations that is happening in those. But then you listen to Google, and these are the guys who are dealing with this type of problem on a regular basis, on a daily basis, and doing the research rather than just listening to this. And they know how tough it is to do what you have to do. And that's literally the difference between these two. So in my opinion, I'm a very positive looking person. So I think, is there a chance for that to be terrible? Yes, definitely is. A good example of it is what happened in the past in the nuclear weapons, right? Or when people started dealing with the science that ended up developing nuclear weapon. But that science, that was a very fantastic thing, and they built it in order to create electricity, right? So it can do good things. It has to do with how human being deals with it. Another issue has to do with biotechnology, right? So this CRISPR that I mentioned, which is editing the genes. So is that a good thing? Yeah, because people who developed it had all had to do with how to deal with cancer or how to deal with the different problems that human body is having. But is it possible to take that and do something negative with it? Yes. I mean, you can go very, very, very simple with it. I mean, a knife is a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it depends. You can kill people with it, but you can cook with it. I mean, be a chef. You know, it is how you use it becomes an issue. But then when it becomes to these science big deals, then the governments and of the entire world, they have to come together and come to some conclusion of what to do. Is it possible that it would be bad? Yes, but hopefully that will not be the case. I'm just hoping.
Got it. Yeah, no, that's good. And then, so from what you've seen so far, like you've been doing this kind of work for the last few decades, and what are some of the biggest challenges like of using AI that could potentially or negatively impact the industry, especially the oil and gas industry? Do you see any potential negatives? I think you might have alluded to that, and you said when you just use bunch of AI experts and not combine it with domain expertise. But do you have any other thoughts on that could potentially have?
Actually, yeah, I can show you. Actually, I wanted to go and look at. Here's the. You asked for that book and paper.
Yeah.
How do I share a screen with you?
If you just send me the link, I'll include it. When we post the podcast. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna from the chat. I just.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you.
Oops. Sorry.
Yep. Yep.
No, that's not it. Hold on one second. Okay, sorry. Okay, here you have statistical modeling, the two cultures.
Yep.
It's a seminal paper written by Leo Breinman, professor at Berkeley.
He's actually a very famous professor. I've read actually a lot of his papers.
I strongly recommend if you're interested in the difference between this technology, read this and you can enjoy it very much. Okay, so sorry, the next item that you mentioned was the
item I mentioned was some of the biggest challenges of using AI that could negatively impact the industry.
So let me give you an example. Bakken shale, right? You all know about it.
Yep.
A company, I can provide you a link with that too. Remind me to do that before.
Sure.
One of the oil industry companies literally spent incredible amount of time, an incredible amount of money, an incredible amount of data. Incredible compared to what they do with others. And a company who's not a domain expert, right?
Sure.
And after all that, what was the conclusion that they came up with?
Probably something very simple and rudimentary.
Well, they told them the fact that your production in North Dakota and Bakken goes up and down, it has to do with weather. I'll send you that.
That was their conclusions.
That was their conclusion. You produce better or worse when the temperature is good. The weather is nice.
Yeah.
Opposite of that is when the weather is.
When the weather is.
That's, I can send you the link. I remind you. And the other one is another very famous company. That at the very beginning, they used people from Google. And Google, you know where they are, right? San Francisco.
Yeah.
North California. So they were close to these people. So I'm not going to go into the detail of who was in the office was there. And they again spent incredible amount of time, money, and you know what the output was from them? we learned from your data that the more porosity you have, the more oil you can get.
Well,
I mean, it takes you
and
tens of millions of dollars and years
to
to
come up
come up
with
with
that.
that.
Yeah.
And then these are the things that I've heard. And then I heard from some of the big companies whom the CEOs and the top people bring these things to, and the engineers have to say, okay, and deal with it. And then you deal with them, they say, man, these guys had no idea what drilling is. You know, I had saying we should be drilling. So this is one of the major problems that we've been having now. That it's still some of the big service companies still have that problem. they think it's great if you go hand in hand with Microsoft or Google, or
Yeah.
Anyway, so that has been a big problem in our industry. And now I call it a pendulum swing. That's when we were here. Now we went all the way to the other side, where the engineers think, hybrid model. All I have to do, I get the data. I use the data to build the model, and I can't. So what do? I know equations,
Yeah.
and I can generate data from the equation and call them AI-based, physics-based AI, or data physics, or all, and I bring them together, and then I can create pattern. Can't I? Of course you can.
Yeah.
Why? Because you generated the data from the pattern. Because mathematical equation is pattern, shows you correlation, right? So when you generate the data from that, what do? You bring it in, and 100% you can generate pattern, or you can discover pattern from the pattern you generated, right? How complex is that? And that is the other part of the swing of this pendulum swing. One was all about AI and machine learning, then one became all about domain expertise. This one had no idea what engineering is. This one literally has no idea what AI is.
Yeah.
That is this problem that our industry is having right now. The key is this two has to come together in the middle.
In the middle. Yep.
Exactly. You have to be number one. You must be a domain expert that wants to go and learn about AI and machine learning. And once you become an expert of that, a practitioner expert of that,
Got it.
Very successful.
Yeah, and I think you answered my next question was, why do you think some of these AI projects fail? I think which you answered right on pretty much. I'm going to skip that question, and then so the next question is, it's like if you were to fill in the blank, the future of AI and automation in the oil and gas is. And I know you're an optimistic person, so I kind of want to hear your thoughts as far as what do you think the future looks like if you had to fill in the blank?
The future, if we eventually go away from this simplicity and assumption, and then the future is going to be incredible, in my opinion. Then, because the future will have a lot to do, when it has to do with AI, it has to do with reality. And as long as we can take the reality and use it, then the optimization is going to go up. It's going to cost a lot less to produce a barrel of oil or MCF of gas, or even to handle CO2 issues associated with it. Geological sequestration of CO2 can be best done by reservoir engineers, because we've dealt with fluid flow in the porous media tens of feet under the ground. And if you want to contribute to climate change, you want to do the same thing. So these are the future, in my opinion, future of our industry. And as long as people use AI the way they're supposed to, which is in its reality, then hopefully we'll be very, very successful. It's going to take time. In my opinion, what's going to happen, it's going to go down first, and then it's going to come back up.
Got you. And then, so for people that are starting out, you always ask, I'm sure you get messages and emails as far as, hey, I'm starting out in this field. What do I do? I know it's a very big question to ask,
Yeah.
but any final thoughts and recommendations, advice that you have for people starting out? Like
Yes, actually, because I teach this a lot. One of the things we do, what I have done, is I have put together a document that I call it AI Primer. And when people, you can share my email address to people that are interested. And if they send me an email and I know who they are and who they work for, then I will be happy to send it to them. And this document is a series of links which has been identified. It starts literally with the way human brain works. So it starts with a little bit of a biology, then it goes to AI and machine learning definitions, then it goes to neural network and fuzzy set theory, and then application to the petroleum engineering and to the engineering specifically. So there is a very, very large number of links that takes you through a sequence to teach you how to gain information. It's a combination of articles, books that are available online, lectures, and videos. It's a combination of many, many different things that I'll be happy to share with anybody who wants. Send me an email and ask for it. I'll do that.
Sure. So for people who actually watch this whole podcast, that's the price for them, right? That's the price of watching this whole podcast and being patient, So if you watch this podcast, I'll share Dr. Shahab's email, when we post this podcast, and then feel free to send him an email, and then he'll basically reply back. Give him some time. Don't rush him, because I'm sure he gets
I will do that very quickly.
Reply back. And provide that information. So so with that being said, thank you very much. I personally learned a lot. I appreciated your time, and I'm sure the audience did the same thing. Thanks a lot again for being here and really spending an hour of your precious time with us today. A very, very good perspective on a lot of these topics. And if you have any final thoughts or comments, Dr. Shahab?
Well, no, actually, thank you very much for having me and asking me these very good questions. It was a pleasure to talk to you and to anybody who listened to this. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shahab. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening today. If you like this podcast, please like, share, and leave a comment. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you in the next episode.